Zuko alone is consistently praised as one of the best episodes of The Last Airbender for its nuanced depiction of war, positioning the Earth Kingdom as the villains and Zuko as the unconventional hero, only to resist the usual outcome of this kind of story when Zuko is rejected by the very people that he just saved. But I want to take a look at something different. The subtle world building of this episode. How Elizabeth Ahas, the writer, wove so much of Avatar's world into how this particular story is told. Also, cheers to the world building and now writing software Worldbuilding for sponsoring this video. They've got out a new piece of writing software which I will be doing a review of at the end of the video for those of you who are interested. But, by the way, 25% off their master tier and above using my code HelloFutureMe, links are all down below. The episode opens with Zuko starving and dehydrated, travelling through a field littered with Earth Kingdom projectiles, which we see repeatedly used throughout the series. The grass has long since grown over many of them, some have sunk into the ground. They're old. This is environmental exposition, information delivered through what is shown in the surroundings to tell us something about this world. All of this is only in shot for a mere few seconds, but it tells us that a battle happened here a long time ago. None of this is ever spoken to by any of the characters in the episode, but it fits with what we know already of the war-torn and divided past of the many Earth Kingdom states, expanding on that idea, that history, without ever explicitly making a point to tell us about it, leaving us to fill in the gaps. The result of details like these is that the world feels lived in. We have to infer things, we get to imagine things, because there is depth here that they don't explicitly share, and that makes it even more enjoyable on rewatching, because we can see things that we didn't see before, make those connections. Another element, of environmental exposition is in the architecture of this episode. A lot of the buildings are built from wood, but why? After all, waterbenders make all their stuff out of ice, until Korra, and firebenders often use metal due to their abilities to manipulate heat and mold metal. See, of the four nations, earthbenders are actually the rarest per capita, meaning there isn't always an abundant workforce that can earthbend, that can build all of these structures. Some villages may not even have many earthbenders at all, if any. This is why in places like military outposts and the royal palace, where there are a lot of earthbenders, where they can afford to hire them, everything is made out of stone. In a sense here, buildings made from stone are a proxy for the wealth disparity and bending disparity in the Earth Kingdom. It also feeds into how peasant earthbenders have been conscripted into the army, taking a vital economic sector away from these poorer communities. But again, not in places like the royal palace, which get an exemption. The lack of stone buildings is a proxy for the constant demands of the war. Zuko alone also explores how the rarity of earthbending ability means that those with it tend to have more influence and power in Earth Kingdom society. It sets you apart more as able to earn more and fight more than it would in the Water Tribes or the Fire Nation. This is a central issue for the episode, by the way. The antagonist is an earthbender, as far as we can tell, the only earthbender in the town, named Gal. He has nobody to challenge him until Zuko comes along. Again, all of this is subtextual, it's never stated in the text, but it doesn't need to be. Because the most important world building isn't the stuff that your plot turns on, the stuff that you go out of your way to make as explicit as possible. It's the hidden web of information that makes your world feel more real, more cohesive, without the viewer or reader ever realizing why. These are facts about the world that work seamlessly into the plot, giving the impression of depth without needing to tell them where that depth comes from. It's not just things being made up, it's things being included with knowledge of how the rest of the world works. Another example of this is in one of the flashbacks, where Azula, as a child, is given a doll described as the pinnacle of Ba Sing Se fashion. A few episodes later, we will actually see what modern Ba Sing Se fashion looks like, when Katara and Toph meet a number of young, wealthy Earth Kingdom girls while getting their makeovers. What's really cool is that you can see similarities between these two styles. The belt, the pleats pattern, the ball earrings, and the open sleeves, the headdress of a sort, but there's a number of distinct stylistic differences indicating change over time. It was more conservative in the past. Once again, it's that sense that the world has been lived in, that there are things going on outside the limited perspective that we're following in the story, outside of the page or screen that we are watching, that it has not remained static, that the world has changed over time. But it's time for what I believe that kids these days call one of those hashtag hot cakes, or at least a hashtag cold take that people don't think about. World building for me isn't just about how your world works, it's history, the facts. When constructing a fictional world, it's just as much about the tone, the mood, the atmosphere. These are things we intentionally cultivate. Is your world a solemn one full of possibility, wonder, one where good and evil stand in sharp contrast? Is it grimdark, hopeless, soulful? I mean, Tolkien wrote Middle-earth's history to begin with grand magical events, with gods and demons coming down to Earth. And they're all gone by the time of The Lord of the Rings, to create a somber world where things feel like they're in a constant decline. There's the sense that a once magnificent world full of magic and wonder has been lost, that the time of the elves is gone. This was intentionally cultivated, and it's a fundamental part of the world he created. The things we choose when world building aren't just to create a sense of logic to your world, it's to do with these more nebulous ideas. This episode for me did a lot for developing the atmosphere of The Last Airbender's world. Up until this point, though with some notable exceptions like the Southern Air Temple, you can visualize the world as a bit more hopeful and light-hearted, because it's easy to fool yourself into the old British fighting the good fight against the Bosch mentality. They defeat the Fire Nation with stink bombs and beat them at the North Pole. When one character dies, she chooses to die, and she receives a beautiful send-off where she joins the heavens. There is a greater, more honourable purpose for her death. The world of Avatar at the start is one with an undercurrent of justice. The heroes become more heroic with every fight, like the war is making them stronger, more who they were meant to be, and Ozai is irredeemably evil. All of this, though, somewhat obscures the grim realities of the war. And Zuko alone challenges this kind of world, because this episode centers around loss. We hear about how Sensu, Gansu's son, is off fighting the war, only to later learn that Sensu has been captured and likely killed. This is the episode where we learn about how Zuko lost his mother when he was young, and it's also the one where we learn about how Iroh lost his son, Lu Ten. The world in this episode is dominated by a feeling of loss, pointless, unceasing, ugly loss that flows from the war, or at least the greed for power. In Zuko alone, the war doesn't make villains more villainous or heroes more heroic. War makes everyone lesser. It doesn't make the Earth Kingdom more united or heroic or bring them together. They're divided, and it brings out opportunists like Gao and later on the Dai Li. Here, war can make even those supposedly fighting for the right worse. Even when Zuko saves Li and the town, when he plays the role of the hero, he is rejected.
No, I hate you!
Ahaz resisted a world in which love or justice would so easily triumph as they do in fiction. There's too much pain wrought into the roots of this world. The loss, rejection, and pain in this episode isn't given any justification to make us comfortable, any catharsis or framing that makes it feel like it happened for a reason. And intentionally so, because this isn't a world in which that happens. The end result is that the world feels tired in this episode, like so much has been lost for nothing and yet the fight drags on. This is a moment of world building. It's not a hopeful world where everyone is fighting the good fight, where bad things happen for a good reason. It is a solemn world wrecked by a grim and tired war that you just want to stop. Because all that is left here with those trappings stripped away is pain, is loss, is Zuko. Alone. World Anvil is a platform for world building. It's got a lot to do with what I talk about on the channel, so I want to be a bit more careful about whether I recommend it to you or not. With that in mind, this is going to be a bit more of a review of World Anvil and this new writing software that they just brought out. But if you just want to know whether or not I recommend it, then yeah, I had a lot of fun playing around with this and I totally do recommend you check it out. Especially D&D players, DMs, and hardcore world builders who like maps or are writing a story for their world. If you're still on the fence, then I want to say it's got a lot of great features you can use totally for free as well, and the best way for you to find out if this is for you is to simply try it. Okay, the crux of World Anvil is that it lets you create articles, maps, and timelines for your world, and I really appreciated how it already had 27 categories for people, places, religions, etc. that make it really easy to navigate and encourages you to think about different aspects of your world, which, by the way, is what I look for in platforms like this. They have to give me a structure that encourages me to do more than just writing it down all in a Word document. But don't worry, I found you could create your own categories too. What is really useful is that articles can reference one another through linked words like a wiki, and it has a whole system, and this is really cool, for creating character sheets in games like D&D, making it perfect for building a game world for DMs. I haven't seen another program do it as well as World Anvil has. I was pleased to find all these templates were pretty detailed. I mean, the language one had spaces for morphology and syntax, even if the layout and format was kind of difficult for me to get my head around at times. But the map feature was perhaps the highlight for me. It is fantastic for D&D or writing sci-fi or fantasy. There is a huge variety of pins for places on the map, and you can even track your D&D parties or characters' progress across the map. And you can also link articles to cities or churches or battlefields, whatever you want, with those pins. I kept on going through the map section and going, oh man, that would be a really cool feature, and then there it was. The timelines allow you to develop your own dating system, and the charts and tables are newer features that allow you to create hierarchies and diagrams like a military hierarchy, or to create your own spell charts. It is a neat addition to all the rest, but it will be more useful for some than others. The one bigger criticism that I would have of World Anvil is that some of it isn't hugely intuitive. There are a lot of little details and tools that you can miss. Sometimes you do have to watch the tutorials to know how to use everything really well, but this complexity does come from how many features and how customizable it all is. So this is kind of a double-edged sword. It means that there's more to do, but yeah. This was particularly the case with the timelines for me personally. They have this universal dating system, which wasn't particularly intuitive and could use a better interface. But still, once I worked it out, it worked great. Though I do want to mention that they are apparently about to bring out a major overhaul of how the timelines work to improve that user interface, to make it more intuitive, and I know that they're constantly trying to improve World Anvil. But they also have a writing program now, and I want to talk about it because, you know, writing and world building, hey, that's me. And to be honest, it works pretty well. You can link articles when you mention them in your story or footnotes, and if you care just as much about the world you have lovingly crafted as the story, then I think this is built for you. But I also found that it was a good way to keep everything consistent, to keep referring back to this library of stuff you have. And if you don't care about your world building as much as you may do your story, perhaps you're writing in a different genre, romance or YA, then maybe this software isn't for you, and that's okay. I like how it lets you divide the book into different sections like you might for different point of view characters or parts, as well as chapters. And all of this is kind of a really good feature that Word or Google Docs really needs to make more accessible. As I said, I am really happy that they've got such a great base free membership, but this manuscript feature, as far as I can tell, is a one of its kind in how it so seamlessly blends your writing and your world building. If you are that kind of writer or world builder, then I can imagine this being a place where it all comes together. Especially when you've got 25% off for all master tiers and above using my code, Hello Future Me. Yeah? Aha! But really, you deserve it. Your story deserves it. Your world deserves it. At least go check it out. I've found it really fun to play around with. Stay nerdy, and I'll see you in the future.